Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sportlight Podcast. On this week's Sportlight Podcast, we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions. Some people love them, some people hate making them, but the truth is that making goals in our life and learning to do so effectively can help us achieve things that we wouldn't otherwise. So we're going to talk about it today.
Welcome to the Sportlight Podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight Podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Well, Dustin, how are you, man?
Hey, Shad, I'm doing great. We're thick in the last push for our Mills program or Mills event that we've got coming up. We're getting close to the goal, but I know you have some thoughts to share with everybody. I just want to ask any of our listeners, especially our regular listeners, if you can help in any way, donating $20 to feed a family or giving us the name of somebody that we can help, to please do so. We've only got about a couple days left to get this thing done before we're out there delivering the food with hundreds of athletes around the state.
Yeah, and we're super excited about that. We're excited for what's going on with James Agnew and Park City. Between Spanish Fork and Park City, we're going to feed thousands of families. Spanish Fork, Mapleton area, and you said it, Dustin, but just to reiterate, if people want to go to E4A.org, and right now it's right on our front page. You could click donate here or learn more, and you could donate to the cause. Anything we get over our $2,000 goal is going to go directly to those families. If we need to give out some $50 gift cards to buy some Christmas presents and things like that, every single cent that is collected is going to go to the families that have been identified in our community that could use it. One other thing we could use help with, not because there's not a need out there, but because of kind of some bureaucracy and privacy issues and things like that, we really want to get to that 100 family goal, and we're getting there. We're working really hard to identify 100 families who could really use it. But if anybody who is listening to this podcast knows of someone who could benefit from a Christmas dinner, maybe a little money to buy their kids some Christmas presents, please reach out to us. My email address is shad@e4a.org. And you could reach out to Dustin at e4a.org. And right now, we are almost as interested in getting those family names. You don't have to give us anything but the name and contact information of a family in need that we could bring a meal to, and that would be a great contribution. If you cannot contribute money, that's okay. Contribute by giving us a name, and we'd love to help make sure people are fed this Christmas.
Yep. It's going to be cool. These athletes are doing a great job of organizing it, and excited to assemble the food together and deliver it. We just need a little bit more help. Hopefully the last kind of push here, fourth quarter, we need everybody, all hands on deck. So yeah, if anybody can help us there. Yeah. That's right.
We're all breaking the huddle right now with our hand in the four. Like
everyone's yelling four. It's four. It's go time. It's winning time. Yeah. We're getting close. And Shad, as we kind of wrap up this year, this will be our last episode for 2022. And then we'll have a whole other host of really good guests coming on next year. This year's been, if you go back and look at the list of guests we've had on this year, I would encourage people, if you haven't, or if this is your first time listening, to this podcast, to go back and look at past episodes. It's not just you and me yapping our gums at each other every Tuesday. We've had some really, really experienced people on in all sorts of different backgrounds and fields from all over the country and from all sorts of different positions in business and mental health and psychology and sports and everywhere. So yeah, some great episodes. But with this being our last one for this year, I know everybody's going to be thinking about, how do I make 2023 the best year ever? And we're going to be sitting down and talking about goals in our own life and goals in our family and our business and things. You had shared with me earlier today, but before we started this, some thoughts you had, really some points from some past episodes, some comments that stuck with you from past guests on our podcast that you thought would be good to sort of go over and kind of reiterate as we apply those towards setting goals for 2023. So why don't you start with that, Shad, and we'll just share a couple of our thoughts from past guests on how setting goals might be a little easier to not only set but follow through on if we take the advice of some past guests we've had on this show.
Awesome. So we will make this Shad and Dustin's 4 tips for making awesome goals in 2023.
Wow. Right. Put that on a t-shirt, man. That's sweet.
That's
our next beautiful item for Eyes Up, Do the Work, and then whatever you just said. I already forgot it, but it sounded cool.
Awesome. So here's the first one. And this has been said a number of times by a number of business leaders, but it was reiterated in our podcast by Justin Sua, the mental performance coach of the Tampa Bay Rays. And he said, in order to be successful, in order to get where you want to get in life, here's the phrase, here's tip number 1. You have to live a life by design and not by default.
Yeah.
And I think that's super profound, right? Because too many of us kind of get caught up in the busyness and the minutia of life. We just kind of wake up and we let life happen to us instead of getting up and designing our life to get where we want it to be. So if we want 2023 to be different than 2022 was, if we just want to take that next step, even if 2022 was great, then we have to put a process, a system in place. We have to design it so that it will be different. If we just wake up and go about doing our day the same way we've been doing 2022, then, I mean, it just is obvious that 2023 is going to be exactly the same as 2022, as long as the world impacts us the same, as long as nothing else changes. Any external factors will be the only variable. So what tips do you have for making a life by design and not by default?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that, leaving things up to chance is a real poor way to go about any sort of culture creation, whether that's our own culture in our family or a business or a team, just hoping that you can roll the ball out and 5 basketball players can go out there and pass and shoot and play defense and score enough points to win. Might happen. You might have the right 5 guys, and it might work. But you're going to find that 1 or 2 leave the next year and all of a sudden it's a different team. And if you just roll out the ball again next year, all of a sudden that doesn't work and you have a really rough year because there's no design, there's no plan. It's just hope. And that's a really, dangerous way to go about setting goals or living life, right? Even in our own families, just hoping that our kids are going to get through it because our older daughter did or our older son made it. So therefore our other kids are going to have the same experience because they're in the same house and we have the same conversations and we do the same. So obviously our 12-year-old son is going to have the same great graduation and move on to college like our 18-year-old daughter did. But that's not how it works, right? There's different things impacted. We have to have a plan. And so when it comes to setting goals, I think the first thing in having a goal setting plan that's by design and not by default is understanding the consistent, repetitive, focus on doing the small minutia type items that make somebody great. The very best basketball players or football players or name the sport in the world, they go out and they do the same drills they did when they were in 8th grade, and they're doing them now in the NBA. They're shooting free throws. They're working on, certain cross dribbles and chest pat. Like they're doing this. They want to be so perfect at it that no matter what the circumstance is in the game, they can execute it perfectly. They can throw the pass perfectly. It's a design. It's a plan. So knowing that's boring, doing the same drill, lifting the same weight, getting up at the same time, sometimes eating the same protein shake or glass of water that you've been doing forever to have yourself ready. And that can be tough. And I think the people who don't take on that elite sort of killer focus to reach their goal fall into the default category, the leave it up to chance. And then eventually by February or March or whatever, the goal becomes an occasional 20 minutes of our week.
Right.
Where the elite people made it a focus, no matter what, this time of the day, I'm doing it focus. And that's by design. And that's embracing the boredom of consistency, which is something we've talked about, something that's been shared on our podcast by Justin Sua, for the Tampa Bay Rays, as well as Allie Bills and other pro athletes and coaches we've had on here, that you have to take the next step. You have to, get through the dark times. But the key is having your plan, sticking to it, and embracing the boring, consistent actions every day.
The tip number 2 then would be what you said, be boringly consistent. Like, focus your goals on what can I do consistently to the point that it becomes boring, but I'm going to do it every single day. What is it that if I did it every single day for this amount of time would change my life this year?
Yeah.
Like, if it's financial goals, it might be something as simple as, before I go to bed, I'm going to record everything that I spent, and I'm going to budget, and that's boring. No one goes to bed at night and thinks, oh, I can't wait to get to bed tonight and write down what I've spent and then plan tomorrow. It's the get in your 10,000 steps. A lot of people are making fitness goals and things like that. It could be that, just, okay, if I'm not there, I'm going to go down to the treadmill, or I'm going to go somewhere where I can walk and make sure that I burn enough calories every day.
Yeah.
Or it's meal prep, or like none of the stuff we're talking about right now is thrilling, is like super exciting. But those are the actual things that are going to make a difference as you design them into your life. And so you have to say, okay, where do I want to get? And then what actions that if I did so consistently that they became boring to me would get me there? And this maybe gets to our next tip, Dustin, that I'd love to get your thoughts on. And that is, how do we know what actions will actually lead to where we want to get? And we've done some past episodes on this and shared some thoughts on it, but the best way is to talk to people who are in a similar situation as you, who have got where you want to get.
Yeah.
Right. And for young people, that might be a teammate. That might be a coach who accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. Too many times, I think we Google it, and what comes up, I'm sure there's like great information and everything like that. But we see these people whose whole livelihood is, for example, fitness, right? And so they spend all day, every day in the gym, and then they come on an Instagram post, they take their shirt off and say, let me tell you how you could look like me in a half an hour, right? And it's probably not going to happen. Whereas, you and I live very similar lives, right? So if I'm like, man, I want to be in better shape like Dustin, it's going to someone and saying, hey, Dustin, what do you do? What's your routine? Like, what do you eat? When do you work out?
Yeah.
And being humble enough to go to someone who's near to you, not to Google because it's safe, but to someone who is on your basketball team, someone who you communicate with, that you admire something about them, and ask them questions about what they eat, how they work out, how they budget, whatever it might be, and to have the humility to learn from those people. What other thoughts do you have about that? So that's the third tip, is be humble enough to learn from others. What thoughts do you have on that?
Well, I think that's the quickest way to gain the most valuable information, is to do it, to find out what other people who have been successful did to become successful, because it's going to save us a lot of reading through books and articles and studies and YouTube videos and TED Talks. And, if we know somebody in our circle, our family or friends or team or whatever neighborhood, I admire the way that a father and mother, raise their kids, and the way their kids have turned out. I can go read every parenting book in the world, or listen to every parent counselor or expert or family therapist or whatever out there. Or I could go down the street 4 houses and knock on the door of my neighbor, who I admire the way that he and she have raised their family, and ask them, what do you do? Like, what do you think are the things that have helped you raise your kids, and find out maybe there's traditions they do, or there's things they do in the evening, or conversations, or maybe I'll find out that it's been really difficult for them, and it's been, and here's things they wish they had avoided, or things they wish they had done better. And they can give me some pointers so I can avoid, some of the traps maybe that they went through to get there. That's going to be a 25-minute or a 30-minute, or invite them over to the house for a barbecue for an hour. Or I can spend hours and hours and hours trying to read, what people say about it. In the process of doing that, here's the beauty of that. If I were to come to you, Shad, in that example, and you were that neighbor, my guess is you would find it flattering, right? Like you and your wife would feel like, wow, that's really nice that the neighbor notices that in us. Like you would feel that that's a kind thing. It's a kind gesture. You would receive that as, you'd appreciate. I'm showing that I appreciate and recognize you, right? So you would feel good. Secondly is you would probably take an extra interest in my family now and in me as a person, because you know what I'm trying to do, and you're helping me. I become, you're my mentor. I'm your apprentice. Like you're going to want to see me and my family be happy and be successful. And so I'm going to gain a resource, an advocate, somebody in my corner to help me, because you're going to feel a responsibility to help me. If this is a sports situation and I want to field a ground ball better, again, I can read everything. I can watch every video. Or I can go ask the best fielder on my team or on another team what they do, and find out how they practice and what they do, and practice with them and mirror them and ask them questions. They're going to take an interest in me. They're going to be appreciative and feel complimented, and that I respect them. And a relationship's going to get built on top of gaining information that's going to help me. I'm also going to build a relationship and have somebody I can call and talk to, versus a book that, it's just words. Not that doing that other stuff isn't also something we should do. I just feel like, to your point about humility, there is a humility piece to that. And because as soon as I come to you and say I'm interested in your help, I'm also admitting that I need help, right? That I'm not the perfect dad or the perfect husband or the perfect coach or the perfect 3-point shooter or whatever it is. And I feel like and you're better than me. Okay. Well, as soon as we get over that, like I admit, I think you're doing a better job than me, and move that, get our ego out of the way, but say, I want to get better. Now we're on to getting better. But what's the roadblock is usually our ego. I think we don't want to admit it. So it's a lot easier to go do it in private on Google and kind of attempt it in the dark than it is to go right next door to the successful, businessman, or the person who has the nicest yard, and I want to have a yard like them. Well, can I mirror you on a Saturday and have you teach me, what do you put on your grass? When do you fertilize? What time do you water? Like, just go ask. Yeah. That's a heck of a lot easier than trial and error. Right.
And to your point, it builds a relationship too.
Yeah.
There's not one person in my life that if they came to me and said, and I've had people like this come to me and say, hey, could you help me with this? Like, I've noticed that you do this well, and I would love to do this.
Yeah.
How do you do it? And in fact, I had a dad who took me to lunch and he admires my daughters.
Yeah.
And he has little daughters. And he offered to buy me lunch. And he said, hey,
it's a great dad.
Would you, and he has little girls, they're younger. And he said, I would love to know some of the things that you think helped your daughters turn out the way they did from a dad's perspective. And I was like, well, first of all, it was like
my wife.
97% my wife. But let me tell you about my 3% contribution.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now that guy, whenever I see him, it's like, hey man, what's up? And what do I ask him all the time?
Yep.
How's your daughters doing?
Yep. You have an interest in his life now.
Yeah. I want those daughters to turn out great.
Yep.
And I want him to be successful. And quite frankly, I'm sitting there. I told him, the first thing I said to him was, you know what, man, just the fact that you care enough to ask this question tells me, I don't know how kids turn out. Sometimes it's not always the way, that parents could do everything right and kids still have their decisions and stuff. But if you care this much, you're going to do everything you can for your kids as a father. So that humility piece is great when making goals, being humble enough to ask people. The last tip, Dustin, that we came up with in our pre-show kind of meeting here was to focus your goals on process instead of outcome. You said, we talked about living a life by design, but sometimes when we think of goals, we think of where we want to get, but quite frankly, just a goal where we want to get without a process to get there, it's just a wish. It's not a goal.
Yeah.
It's just a wish. And so talk to me about making goals in regard to process instead of goals in regard to destination.
Well, and I think this one is maybe the hardest of the four, because in the one hand, we're saying, all right, we're setting a goal, which really in all actuality is a set destination, right? Like I want to lift this much weight, or I want to have this much money saved, or I want to be able to go, whatever it is, right? Have this report on my physical that says my heart is now here, and it's because I ate all these things and I worked out and I did all these things and I want to be deemed healthy. And we do everything we can to get there, and then maybe our body had another plan. Or the team did everything they could do and everybody maximized their ability. They just weren't good enough. They just weren't fast enough, as hard as they tried. And if the award was given out for who tried the hardest, that team should have won, but they didn't. The other team had bigger, faster, stronger kids, right? There's so many circumstances and so many things that pop up that come to get in the way of our goal, the roadblocks that we can't control. We don't know when they're coming. And so if the goal is only the end result and we don't quite reach that end result, did we fail? And if we're simply looking at it as this was my goal, I didn't get it, so therefore I failed. If it's a yes, no, question, then yes, I didn't get it, I failed. And that's hard because yes, we do want to have these, we want to set these goals, but really in the process is where all the lessons are learned and all the real difficulties in development are. And I think the hope is that we can look back and say, okay, it is a goal, which in theory really means it's something we're hoping for, right? We're reaching towards this. It's not always going to be attainable, but we're trying to get there. The point is to maximize our ability, to be able to look in the mirror and say, I honestly feel like I gave everything I had, and here's where it got me. If it's not quite where I wanted, I did a great job. And I'm going to keep working and I'm going to keep trying to get there, but I'm not quite there yet. But it's not because of lack of effort. The process, I gave all I had to it. And sometimes I'm just not, maybe the goal is just not attainable. And okay, then we need to drop the goal down a little bit. But sure, reach, like let's set the goal high, make it hard and go get it. But also I think we need to have the foresight to be able to say, you know what? This might be a little bit more than I can chew off this goal, but what I'm learning in the process, the boring, consistent, like we talked about, embracing that, I've asked other people for help. I've done what they've asked. I've studied it. I really have. I've been committed. I'm winning the hour. This is the hour of the day that I'm giving to this goal, and I've been consistent at doing it. And I just didn't quite get there. I don't think that means we failed. I think that just means we didn't quite reach a goal that was maybe unattainable. And that's the case for every athlete. There's very few athletes that there's one in every sport right now. Everybody else, if we follow the yes-no equation that I just threw out, everybody else is a failure then, because there's only one that's the very best. Mm-hmm. And even that number one, you can't get 100% of people to really ever agree with who that one is. Who's the best basketball player in the world right now? I could ask 100 people, there'd probably be 6 different answers, right? Who's the very best quarterback? Most people might say it's Tom Brady, but somebody's going to come and say, nah, it's somebody else, right? So who is that person? So really become our best is the goal. And sometimes that's not going to be the best or reaching the goal that we set, but the process we can control. We can control the effort we put into it, the process we follow, that we have control over.
I agree. That's awesome. So here's the 4 tips. just real quick podcast today, but here's the 4 tips. Live a life by design. Tip number 1, live a life by design, not by default. Tip number 2, talk to others who are being successful at the thing you want to be successful at to help come up with that design.
Yeah.
Tip number 3, make goals in regard to the process, not the destination. Sometimes the destination is out of our control, but if you put a process in place and you stick to that process, you're going to be better in 2023 than you were in 2022. You may not get everywhere you wanted to get. So for example, let's say I want to lose 30 pounds in 2023. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut out all soda, and I'm going to eat more grains and protein and healthy stuff. I'm going to cut out all sugar. Well, if I actually do that, I'm going to be way better off. I don't know if I would lose 30 pounds, but I would be way better off if we're having this podcast next year in 2023, if I do that in a boringly consistent way. So number 3, make goals in regard to process, not outcome. And then 4, set that process. So this is design it. How do you design it? Talk to others, and then make goals in regard to the process, and then do that in a boringly consistent way. Just stick to it. And I know from these principles in my own life, and also from trusting those who've taught them to us, and from our own experiences, if we will do those things, design it, listen to others, focus on the process, and then be boringly consistent, we'll have a better 2023 than we had a 2022 if we have goals to improve.
And so, and all of that can be wrapped up, Shad, in our motto, right? You do that, keep your eyes up, stay focused on the goal, and work on the process, and just keep your eyes up, keep working. Don't get discouraged and look down and be pessimistic or say you can't do it or give up. Just keep your eye on the prize, keep working towards it, get as close as you can to it, and scratch and claw and fight and leave it all out there. And then wherever we stop, if we can say, hey, I spent myself in a worthy cause and I gave all that I had, and then we did good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, in addition, Dustin, I'm sure you'll want to do the same. We wish everyone a Merry Christmas. We love the athletes that we work with. We love the coaches that we work with, the administrators, all of the programs and clubs and teams. It's just, you're some of the greatest joys in our life. We love doing what we do with you and associating with you. We hope you have an incredible Christmas. We hope that you have a wonderful new year, and hopefully these 4 tips, along with many others that you already know, will help us to have a better 2023 than we had a 2022, even if it was awesome. Any parting thoughts, Dustin?
If we're not with your child's school or team, or your nephew or your niece's school or team, or your colleague at work who's got a son or daughter involved in athletics, make that a goal to maybe help us get in front of them. We could use your help. We're trying to get to everybody. So other than that, Happy New Year, and eyes up, do the work.
One more thing. I wore this on purpose. We have some of our materials. If you're not on YouTube, I'm wearing this sweet E4A hoodie. And if you go to our website, it'd make an awesome Christmas present. We have some other of our sayings, each of our core principles: win the hour, compete without contempt, seek to bless, not to impress. And which one didn't I say, Dustin? Resiliency. Yeah, resiliency. And so we have all the shirts there, motivational shirts for everyone. It helps our cause, but it also is something that our teenagers think are cool. So go shop there for Christmas if you can. And also Amazon Smile, we have all of our, if you just want an easy way to help out a nonprofit organization that tries to do the good that we do, just sign in to Amazon Smile. Directions are there on our website, and shop. All you have to do is shop, and then a little portion of that Amazon will donate to Especially for Athletes. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Eyes up, do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.